Little girl stopped the Hell's Angels, saying, "They're hurting my mom now." He turned instantly. "Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much." The late afternoon sun pressed low over the two-lane road as the motorcycle rolled through town at a steady pace. The engine sounded deep and calm like a held breath. The rider had just passed the old gas station when a small figure rushed from the sidewalk without warning and stood directly in his path. He squeezed the brake hard, and the bike stopped just feet away, heat ticking from the engine as dust drifted up from the road. The girl could not have been older than 8 years old. Her hair was tangled, her shoes were mismatched, and her chest rose and fell too fast for a child her age. She looked up at the man towering above her, leather vest darkened by years of sun and road, tattoos running down his arms like old stories carved into stone. For a long second she could not speak, as if the words were too heavy to lift. Then she said it, quiet but sharp, the kind of sentence that cuts through everything. "They are hurting my mom now." The rider froze. He did not ask who or where. He did not look around for trouble. Something inside him shifted instantly, like a switch thrown in the dark. He cut the engine and swung his leg over the bike, kneeling so his eyes met hers. His voice came out slow and low, careful not to scare her. "Where is she?" The girl pointed back toward a row of aging houses at the edge of town, paint peeling, windows dim. She shook as if the air itself was cold, though the day was warm. He took off his jacket and draped it around her shoulders, the leather far too big, but solid, real. "Stay right here," he said. "Do not move." She nodded, clutching the jacket tight, watching him turn back toward the houses without another word. Each step he took felt heavier than the last, memories pressing in that he had buried long ago. A slammed door. A voice crying for help. A moment when he had chosen to keep riding. He had promised himself never again. As he reached the corner of the street, a sound drifted from one of the houses, not loud, not clear, but enough. Enough to confirm that the girl had not imagined anything. He squared his shoulders and kept walking, not as a biker looking for a fight, but as a man who had already decided that whatever waited behind that door would not stay hidden any longer. He moved closer to the house the girl had pointed to, every sense alert as the late-day light faded into long shadows across the yard. The place looked forgotten, with a sagging porch and grass that had grown tall enough to brush against his boots. A screen door hung crooked, opening and closing slightly with the breeze, making a soft tapping sound that felt too loud in the quiet street. As he reached the bottom step, he heard it again, a muffled sound from inside. Not a scream but a strained breath, the kind that comes when someone is trying not to cry out. He stopped for a moment, listening, grounding himself. This was not about anger or revenge. This was about timing and control. He stepped onto the porch slowly, careful to keep the boards from creaking. Through a cracked window he saw movement, a figure shifting inside the dim living room. The air smelled of old wood and dust. He reached for the door and pushed it open just enough to see. Inside, the room was small and cluttered, furniture worn down by years of use. Near the center of the space, a woman was backed against the wall, one hand pressed to her side, her face pale with fear. She was trying to stand tall, trying to look stronger than she felt, but her legs trembled. When she saw the man in the doorway, her eyes widened, not with relief, but with fresh panic. To her, he looked like another threat. She raised her free hand in front of her, her voice shaking as she spoke. "Please just leave. I do not want any trouble." He lifted both hands where she could see them and took a step back, keeping his tone calm and steady. "I am not here to hurt you," he said. "Your daughter sent me. She is outside." The word daughter cut through her fear like a light breaking through a dark room. Her shoulders sagged, and she let out a breath she had been holding too long. She slid down the wall until she was sitting on the floor, strength leaving her all at once. He moved closer but slowly, stopping several feet away to give her space. He could see now that she was bruised, nothing graphic, but enough to tell a story of fear and exhaustion. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, embarrassed by the tears she could not stop. "I told her not to go out there," she said quietly. "I told her to hide." He knelt down to her level, keeping his voice low so it would not carry outside. She did the right thing, he said. You did too. You kept her safe. Another sound came from deeper in the house then, a heavy footstep, followed by a voice raised in frustration, words slurred but loud enough to make the woman flinch. She grabbed the man's arm without thinking, her fingers digging into his sleeve. Please, she whispered. You do not understand. He will only get worse if you stay. He looked toward the hallway where the sound had come from, then back at her. I understand enough, he said. You are not alone anymore. He helped her to her feet carefully, making sure she was steady. Stay right here, he told her. Do not move unless I come back for you. She nodded, fear still written across her face but mixed now with a fragile hope. As he stood and turned toward the hallway, his jaw tightened, memories pressing in again. Another house. Another hallway. Another moment when he had chosen to walk away. This time, he did not hesitate. He stepped forward, his presence filling the narrow space. Not with violence, but with certainty. Whatever waited at the end of that hall was about to face something it did not expect. A man who had already decided that this story would not end the way it always had before. He advanced down the narrow hallway with measured steps, not rushing, not hesitating, letting his presence announce itself without a single word. The floorboards groaned softly beneath his weight, a sound that carried ahead of him like a warning. At the end of the hall a man stood near a small kitchen table, his back half turned, one hand gripping the edge of the counter as if to steady himself. The smell of stale alcohol hung in the air, mixed with something sour and old. When the man turned and saw who was there, confusion crossed his face first, then irritation, then something closer to fear. He opened his mouth to speak, but the biker raised one hand, palm out, stopping him without touching him. This ends now, the biker said, his voice even and controlled, not loud but impossible to ignore. The man laughed once, short and sharp, trying to reclaim ground he no longer held. You have no business here, he replied, swaying slightly as he spoke. This is my house. The biker shook his head slowly. There is a child outside wearing my jacket because she thought her mother was about to be hurt. That makes it my business. Silence followed, thick and heavy. The man glanced past the biker toward the hallway, then back again, his jaw tightening. You should leave, he muttered, before this gets ugly. The biker took one more step forward, close enough now that the man could see his eyes clearly, not wild, not angry, but settled and final. This already is ugly, he said. You are done. For a moment, it looked like the man might try to push past him, might test whether size and intimidation still worked the way they once had. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way the biker did not move an inch. Maybe it was the calm certainty that violence would not go the way he expected. His shoulders slumped, and the anger drained out of his face, replaced by something small and bitter. Get out then, he said quietly. Take her and go. The biker did not respond right away. He held the man's gaze for several long seconds, making sure there was no sudden shift, no last attempt at control. Then he turned his head slightly toward the living room and spoke without looking back. It is time, he said. You and your daughter are leaving. He waited until he heard movement behind him, soft footsteps, cautious but determined. The woman appeared at the end of the hall, her face still pale, but her posture straighter than before. She did not look at the man as she passed, only at the biker, as if waiting for permission to believe this was real. He nodded once. She moved quickly, gathering nothing, not a bag, not a coat, just herself. When they reached the front door together, the late light spilled in, warm and golden, a sharp contrast to the dimness behind them. Outside, the little girl sat on the curb exactly where she had been told to stay, knees pulled to her chest, the oversized jacket wrapped tight around her. When she saw her mother step out, she jumped to her feet and ran, colliding into her with all the force her small body could manage. The biker stepped aside, giving them space, watching as the woman knelt and held her child, whispering words meant only for the two of them. The girl looked up then, eyes wide, searching his face. Is it over? She asked. He crouched down so they were eye level again. It is over for today, he said. And you did the bravest thing I have seen in a long time. She nodded as if accepting a truth she had already known. The biker glanced back once at the dark doorway behind him, then toward the street where his motorcycle waited. This was not finished. He could feel it. But for now, one child was safe, one mother was standing in the open air, and for the first time in a very long time, he knew he had not ridden past something that mattered. The moment the woman rose to her feet with her daughter still clinging to her, the little girl suddenly became aware of where she was and who stood nearby. Her arms tightened around her mother's neck, and she turned her face away from the biker, burying it against familiar warmth. The jacket slipped from her shoulders and fell to the ground, forgotten. The biker noticed the shift immediately. The fear had not vanished, it had only moved. Now that the shouting was gone and the danger no longer loud, the child's eyes were free to focus on him, on the leather, the height, the weight of his presence. He stayed exactly where he was, several steps back, hands open and still. It was a look he recognized, the look of a child who had learned too early that big figures often meant pain. The mother felt the tension in her daughter's body and turned slightly, angling herself as a shield without thinking. "I am sorry," she said quietly, her voice carrying both gratitude and instinctive caution. "She is not used to strangers, especially not men like you." He nodded once, accepting the truth without offense. "She does not need to be," he replied. "You did nothing wrong." He lowered himself to sit on the front step, putting distance between them, making himself smaller. The child peeked out then, just enough to see him, her fingers still knotted in her mother's shirt. Her eyes were dark and alert, studying him the way a wild animal studies movement, ready to bolt. He did not speak to her right away. He picked up the jacket from the ground and set it beside him instead of handing it back. "That is yours if you want it," he said softly. "Or it can stay right here." The girl watched him closely, her gaze flicking between his face and the jacket. After a long pause, she shook her head and pressed closer to her mother. The biker smiled, not wide, not showing teeth, just a small shift at the corner of his mouth. "That is okay too." The mother took a breath she had not realized she was holding. "Thank you," she said, "for stopping, for not making things worse." He looked up at her then, meeting her eyes fully for the first time. "Making it worse was never my plan," he said. "Making it stop was." She nodded slowly, absorbing his words. The street around them remained quiet, neighbors unaware or pretending to be. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. The late light softened the edges of everything, making the moment feel fragile, like it might break if handled wrong. The little girl shifted again and whispered something into her mother's ear. The woman hesitated, then looked at the biker. "She wants to know if you are going to yell too," she said. The question landed heavier than any accusation. He shook his head immediately. "No," he said. "I am not going to yell. I do not yell at kids." The girl studied him again, searching for signs of a lie. She pulled back just enough to look directly at him, her voice small but clear. "Are you mad?" He thought about it for a moment before answering. "Not at you," he said. "Not at your mom." The girl frowned, processing this. Then she asked the next question, the one that mattered most. "Are you staying?" He felt the weight of that single word settle into his chest. Staying meant responsibility. Staying meant involvement. Staying meant this would not be a story he rode away from. He glanced at the mother, giving her the chance to decide. She looked back at her daughter, then at him, fear and hope colliding in her expression. "Just for a little while," she said quietly. "Until I can think." He nodded once. "I can stay for a little while," he said. The girl relaxed a fraction, not enough to trust, but enough to breathe. She reached down and picked up the jacket, dragging it closer, not to wear but to keep near, as if it had become a symbol of the moment everything changed. The biker remained seated on the step, a silent presence, letting the space between them exist. He knew trust could not be demanded or rushed. It had to be earned in stillness, in patience, in the choice to wait. For now, it was enough that the fear in the child's eyes no longer screamed, that it had softened into cautious curiosity. For now, that was progress, and he was not going anywhere. He stayed seated on the step while the woman helped her daughter settle beside her, the child leaning into her side, but no longer shaking. The street felt suspended in time, as if the town itself was holding its breath. After a few minutes the biker shifted his weight and spoke again, his tone gentle and deliberate. "My name is Daniel," he said. "You do not have to remember it if you do not want to." The girl looked at him briefly, then back at her mother. The woman nodded for her, giving silent permission. "I am Claire," the woman said. "And this is Lily." Daniel inclined his head slightly. "Nice to meet you, Lily." Lily did not answer, but she did not hide either. She traced a line in the dirt with her shoe, listening. Daniel turned his attention back to Claire. Do you have somewhere safe you can go tonight? He asked. Claire hesitated, then shook her head. Not nearby, she said. I was trying to wait it out. I thought if I stayed quiet it would calm down. Daniel did not challenge her or offer judgment. He had heard those words before, from people who were doing the best they could with limited choices. Waiting it out does not work when someone thinks silence is permission, he said. Lily looked up at him then, her eyes sharp. My mom told me to be quiet, she said. Daniel met her gaze immediately. Your mom was trying to protect you, he said. And you protected her too. That is not being quiet. That is being brave. Lily considered this carefully. She looked at her mother, who nodded, tears threatening again, but held back. Daniel stood slowly, making sure his movements stayed calm. My bike is right there, he said, gesturing toward the street. There is a diner 2 miles down the road. Bright lights. People around. We can sit there while you figure out next steps. You do not have to decide anything right now. Claire pressed her lips together, thinking. Lily tugged gently at her hand. Mom, can we go somewhere with pancakes? She asked. The question broke something open. Claire let out a soft laugh that turned into a sob she quickly wiped away. Pancakes sound good, she said. Daniel nodded. Pancakes it is. He walked to his motorcycle, but did not start it yet. Instead, he took off his helmet and set it on the seat, then turned back to them. Lily eyed the bike with a mix of fascination and fear. It is loud, she said. Daniel smiled slightly. It can be, he said. That is why you will ride with your mom in my truck. He gestured down the street where an old pickup was parked under a tree. I do not take kids on motorcycles unless they ask a lot of questions first. Lily seemed relieved by that. Claire looked surprised. You have a truck too, she said. Daniel shrugged. Sometimes loud is not the right answer. They walked together toward the pickup, Lily staying between the two adults, holding both hands now. Daniel opened the door for them and waited until they were settled before circling to the driver's side. As he pulled away from the curb, Lily watched the house disappear through the back window. She did not say anything, but she did not look back again. The diner glowed ahead like a promise, neon lights reflecting off the windshield. Inside, the smell of coffee and breakfast food wrapped around them, familiar and safe. They slid into a booth near the window. Lily climbed onto the seat and immediately picked up the menu, pointing at pictures. Daniel ordered for all three, keeping it simple. As they waited, Lily finally spoke again. Are you a policeman? She asked. Daniel shook his head. No, he said. Are you a bad guy? She asked next, blunt and honest. Claire stiffened, but Daniel answered without pause. I used to make bad choices, he said. Now I try to make better ones. Lily nodded, satisfied. The food arrived and Lily focused on her plate, hunger winning over fear. Claire watched her eat, shoulders relaxing for the first time all day. Thank you, she said quietly to Daniel. I do not know what happens next. Daniel met her eyes. Next does not have to be tonight, he said. Tonight is pancakes. Tomorrow we make calls. We find help. Lily looked up with a mouthful of food and smiled at him, syrup on her chin. Daniel smiled back, just as small. For the first time since the girl had stepped into the road, the world felt like it was moving forward again, slow and careful, but in the right direction. The diner grew quieter as the evening settled in, the clink of dishes fading into the background. Lily leaned against her mother's side, full and sleepy, tracing slow circles on the tabletop with one finger. Claire watched her with a softness that came from relief mixed with exhaustion. Daniel sat across from them, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee he had not touched. The warmth of the place pulled his thoughts inward, away from the present, and into a memory he usually kept buried. He did not notice the shift at first, but Claire did. She saw his eyes drift, his jaw tightened slightly, the way his shoulders squared as if bracing for something unseen. You okay? She asked gently. Daniel took a breath and nodded once. Just remembering, he said. Lily looked up at him, curiosity replacing sleep for a moment. Remembering what? She asked. Daniel hesitated, then decided not to lie. A time I did not stop, he said. Hey, long time ago. Lily frowned. Like when people need help? She said. Yes, Daniel replied. Like that. The memory came back in pieces. A different town. A different road. He had been riding late, tired and angry, mind locked on miles ahead instead of what was right in front of him. He remembered passing a small house on the edge of town, lights flickering, a door slamming. He remembered hearing a sound that could have been laughter or could have been something else. He had told himself it was none of his business. He had kept writing. The next day, he learned what had happened. A neighbor had found a child sitting on the porch alone, waiting for someone who was not coming back. Daniel's grip tightened around the mug. I told myself I was not the kind of man who could fix things, he said quietly. I told myself someone else would step in. Claire listened without interrupting. Lily watched him closely, her face serious in a way that only children could manage. Did someone help them? Lily asked. Eventually, Daniel said. But eventually is a long time when you are small. The words hung in the air. Claire reached across the table and placed her hand over his. Not pressing, just resting there. You stopped today, she said. Daniel looked up at her. Today does not erase before, he said. No, she agreed. But it changes after. Lily nodded as if this made perfect sense. My teacher says when you mess up you can still do better next time, she said. Daniel felt something loosen in his chest. That is a smart teacher, he said. Lily smiled faintly and yawned, the moment passing as quickly as it came. Daniel glanced toward the window, where the streetlights cast long reflections across the glass. He knew the memory would not disappear. It never did. But it no longer stood alone. It sat beside the image of a girl standing in the road, brave enough to stop a stranger and ask for help. Claire shifted in her seat. I was afraid to leave, she said softly. Not just of him. Of what came after. Shelters. Forms. Questions. Daniel nodded. Fear likes to stack things until moving feels impossible, he said. That is why we take it one step at a time. Tomorrow we start with a phone call. He reached into his pocket and slid a small card across the table. It had a name and a number written in careful block letters. A friend of mine runs a place 2 counties over, he said. Quiet. Safe. They know how to help without asking you to explain everything all at once. Claire picked up the card, her hands steady now. Thank you, she said. Lily stirred and leaned fully against her mother, eyes closing. Daniel stood slowly, giving them time. I will drive you wherever you need to go tonight, he said. Claire nodded. I think we can manage a motel, she said. Just for sleep. Daniel paid the bill and walked them out into the cool night air. He helped Lily into the truck, careful not to rush, then closed the door gently. As he climbed into the driver's seat, he felt the weight of the memory settle again, but this time it did not crush him. It reminded him. He started the engine and pulled onto the road, headlights cutting through the dark. Behind him, the past stayed where it belonged. Ahead of him, a child slept safely, and that was enough to keep him moving forward. The truck rolled quietly down the highway, the tires humming softly against the pavement as the night deepened. Claire sat beside Daniel, her hands folded in her lap, eyes focused on the dark road ahead. Lily had finally fallen asleep in the back seat, her small form curled up under a blanket, her breath steady and slow. The quiet was soothing, yet heavy with unspoken thoughts. Daniel kept his eyes on the road, but his mind was elsewhere. He could feel the weight of the decision Claire was about to make, the uncertainty that lingered in the air like a storm waiting to break. He wasn't sure what she was thinking, but he knew the struggle, the hesitation that came when you were standing at a crossroads in your life. Claire broke the silence first. I never thought it would come to this, she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel didn't look at her right away, but he heard the pain in her words, the exhaustion that had settled in her voice. You're doing what's best for her, he said simply. It doesn't always feel like it, she replied. It feels like I've failed her, like I should have. Been stronger, done more. Daniel exhaled slowly, a deep breath to steady himself. You're not failing her, Claire. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is step away from a situation that's dangerous, that's not giving you any way out. He glanced over at her for a brief moment, his gaze softening. You're choosing to protect her. That's what matters. Claire turned her head slightly, her eyes reflecting the passing lights from the street lamps outside. I wish it felt that easy, she said, her words a little shaky now. Every part of me wants to go back, to make it work, to think that I can handle it. But deep down, I know I can't. I'm not strong enough. Daniel's grip tightened on the steering wheel. That's not weakness, Claire. That's knowing your limits. Knowing when it's time to walk away before things get worse. He paused, allowing his words to sink in. It takes a lot more strength to leave than to stay in something that's breaking you. Claire was silent for a long time, and for a moment, Daniel thought she wasn't going to respond. But then she spoke again, her voice softer, quieter, but still full of resolve. I just don't want to hurt her anymore, Daniel. I can't stand the thought of putting her through this. Daniel's chest tightened as he thought of the young girl sleeping in the back seat, unaware of the turmoil her mother was going through. He had seen too many people struggle with the same feelings, the same guilt. But he knew it wasn't the time to give in to that. Claire, he said gently, you're doing everything you can to protect her. That's all you can do. Sometimes, doing the right thing feels like the hardest thing. But you're making the hard choice now, so she can have a better chance later. He turned his head slightly, giving her a reassuring look. You're not alone in this, Claire. And you're not the only one who's ever had to make a choice like this. She nodded slowly, the weight of her thoughts still heavy but starting to lift. I just don't know where to go from here, she admitted. I don't even know if I'll be able to trust anyone again after all this. Daniel remained quiet for a moment, letting her words hang in the air before responding. Trust is earned, Claire, he said, and it takes time. Don't rush it. Right now, you just need to take care of her, and then you can focus on yourself. You've been carrying this weight for so long. It's going to take time to unload it. But you're stronger than you think. Claire glanced at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of relief and gratitude. I don't know how to thank you, she said quietly. For everything. Daniel looked at her, his expression softening. You don't have to thank me, Claire. Just do what you need to do. Take the time to heal. For her. For you. The rest will come. The truck continued down the road, the world outside growing quieter as the night stretched on. Daniel felt a small sense of peace settle over him. He had done what he could. The rest, he knew, was up to Claire. And for the first time in a long time, he wasn't thinking about the past. He was thinking about the future, and about what it meant to make the right choices, no matter how difficult they might be. The truck rumbled slowly down the road, the engine a steady hum as the world outside faded into darkness. Claire had her hands resting on her lap, fingers absently playing with the edge of her jacket. Lily had long since fallen asleep again, her head resting against the window, the soft rhythm of the truck lulling her into a peaceful rest. Claire glanced out the window, watching the endless stretch of highway unfold ahead of them. It felt like time had stopped. The world outside was just a blur, but inside the truck, the moments between them felt suspended. Daniel kept his eyes on the road, his expression steady, though his mind was elsewhere. The night was deep, quiet, and he could feel the weight of the decisions Claire was making. She had a long road ahead, a journey that would be filled with unknowns. The idea of starting over was always a heavy one. Claire broke the silence once again. Do you ever wonder if it would have been easier to just stay where we were? She asked quietly, her voice almost lost in the hum of the engine. Daniel's grip on the steering wheel tightened, but only for a moment. He thought about her question carefully before answering. Staying would have been easier for a while, he said, but easy doesn't always mean better. Sometimes, staying means sacrificing something more important. Claire exhaled slowly, staring out into the dark road ahead. I don't know if I'll ever feel strong enough to go back, she admitted. I don't think I ever felt strong enough to leave in the first place. She looked at him then, her eyes filled with a mix of uncertainty and exhaustion. How do you do it? How do you move on from something that's been a part of your life for so long? Daniel didn't answer right away. He kept his focus on the road, but his thoughts were far away, drifting back to a time when he had asked himself the same question. The world had felt different back then. He had been someone else. Sometimes, you don't move on all at once, he said finally. It happens in small moments. In the decisions you make when you're too tired to keep going, but you push forward anyway. It's in the choice to stop running, to stop pretending that everything is fine. You don't move on in one big step. It's 1,000 small steps. Claire looked at him, her eyes narrowing slightly as she processed his words. It doesn't feel like I'm moving, she said softly. It feels like I'm stuck, like I'm going in circles. Daniel nodded slowly, his voice gentle. I know what that feels like. I've been there. I think we all have, at some point. But the thing about circles is that they don't last forever. Eventually, you hit a point where the circle breaks, and you're moving in a new direction. Claire didn't say anything, but she seemed to consider his words carefully, the silence between them comfortable for the first time in a while. After a few minutes, she spoke again. What happens next? She asked. Daniel kept his eyes on the road. Next, we make sure you and Lily are safe. That's the first step. After that, we take it one day at a time. There's no rush. You've got time. Claire nodded, though she still seemed unsure. But what if time runs out? She whispered. What if I don't know what to do with the time I have left? Daniel finally glanced at her, his expression softening. "You've got more time than you think," he said, quietly. "And when you don't know what to do with it, you take it day by day, step by step. That's all anyone can do." Claire let out a long breath, her shoulders relaxing slightly. She looked down at her hands, the tension easing just a little. For the first time in a long time, she felt the smallest bit of peace settle inside her. Maybe it wasn't about finding all the answers right away. Maybe it was just about taking that first step and trusting that the rest would come. She looked over at Daniel again, a hint of gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." Daniel glanced at her, his eyes unreadable, but there was something there, something that made him nod slightly. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "You've done the hard part. You're taking the first step. That's what matters." They drove on in silence for a while, the truck cutting through the night. Claire looked out the window, the world outside quiet and still, while the road ahead stretched out, full of possibilities. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, she felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was the beginning of something new. Maybe, just maybe, this was the first step in finding her way home. The truck continued its journey down the highway, the soft hum of the engine now a comforting presence in the quiet night. Claire sat with her head against the window, staring out at the dark expanse of trees and fields passing by. The miles stretched on, endless and still, as if time itself had slowed down. Lily slept soundly in the back, her small form curled up, wrapped in the warmth of the blanket. For a moment, Claire allowed herself to just exist, to breathe without the weight of every decision pressing on her chest. But even in the quiet, her mind refused to stop. What had she done? What was she doing? The uncertainty was a constant companion, a shadow that followed her no matter how far she tried to run. She glanced at Daniel, who was focused on the road ahead, his face calm and collected. There was something about him, something steady and unshakable. He had helped her get this far, but what now? What happened next? The thought circled back to the motel they had stopped at earlier that night. She had felt the weight of her choices settle more heavily on her shoulders the moment they checked in, to shine in the darkness. It was a quiet hope, a gentle one, but it was there, and that was enough. As they continued down the highway, Claire's mind drifted back to Lily. The little girl had been through so much in her short life, and Claire knew the road ahead would be difficult for her too. But right now Lily was safe. They were safe, and that was all that mattered. For now, that was enough. Tomorrow, they would make a plan. They would figure out where to go next. But tonight, they had each other, and that was a start. The miles passed slowly, the darkness surrounding them like a blanket. But in the quiet of the truck, with the soft breathing of her daughter and the steady hum of the engine, Claire felt the first stirrings of peace. She wasn't sure where the road would take them, but she knew she wasn't facing it alone. And for the first time, that thought felt like enough. The morning sun had barely risen when Daniel pulled into the parking lot of the small shelter he had mentioned the night before. The lights of the place flickered in the early dawn, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. The air felt different today, lighter, as if the world was holding its breath just like Claire had. She sat next to him, her hands folded tightly in her lap, but there was something else now, a quiet kind of determination behind her eyes that hadn't been there the day before. She wasn't sure what the next step was, but she had made it here. And that was enough for today. The truck came to a stop, the engine humming as it wound down. For a moment, there was nothing but the soft breathing of Lily, who was still asleep in the back. Claire looked over at Daniel, her lips pressed together, her thoughts hidden behind a veil of uncertainty. She opened her mouth to speak, but hesitated. After a few moments, she finally found her voice. "Is this the right place?" she asked, her voice quiet, but with a strength that surprised even her. Daniel turned his head, his gaze steady as it met hers. "This is a safe place," he said. "And they will help you, Claire. They won't ask you questions you aren't ready to answer. But it's up to you now." She nodded slowly, trying to absorb the weight of his words. "What if I'm not ready?" she whispered, more to herself than to him. Daniel's expression softened. "No one is ever really ready for the hard stuff. But you've already taken the first step. And that's more than most people ever do." Claire swallowed hard, blinking back the tears that threatened to fall. She could feel them there, but she wasn't sure if she was ready to let them out. Not yet. Not here. The truck door opened with a soft click as Daniel unbuckled his seatbelt. He didn't wait for Claire to speak again. "Let's get you inside," he said, his voice gentle but firm. Claire followed his lead, taking a deep breath before opening her door and stepping out onto the cool concrete. The first steps towards something new felt heavier than she expected, but with each step, the weight lifted just a little more. When she reached the door of the shelter, Daniel was already ahead of her, his hand on the handle. He opened the door, and Claire could already see the warmth inside, the soft glow of the lights, the quiet hum of voices. It was exactly what she needed, though she didn't know how to accept it yet. The receptionist, a woman with short, silver hair and a friendly smile, looked up as they entered. "Morning," she greeted them. "You must be Claire. We've been expecting you." Claire froze for a moment, her hand on the doorframe. "Expecting me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman nodded. "We were given a heads up. Don't worry, you're safe here." Claire looked at Daniel, who gave her a small nod, reassuring her without a word. With a shaky breath, she stepped fully inside. Lily, still half asleep, rubbed her eyes as she shuffled out of the truck, her small hand gripping Claire's for support. They walked inside together, Claire trying her best to hold it together, but with every step, it felt like she was finally allowing herself to feel the full weight of the last few days. The receptionist led them down a short hallway and into a room with a couple of chairs and a small round table. A soft carpet covered the floor, and the walls were decorated with calm, pastel colors. "You're in good hands here," the receptionist said. "Kindly, just make yourself comfortable. We'll check in with you in a little while. There's a room in the back where you and your daughter can rest." Claire looked around, taking in the quiet safety of the space, and finally, she let herself breathe. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice steady now. The receptionist smiled and left the room, closing the door behind her. Claire turned to Daniel, her eyes filled with gratitude. "You've done so much for us," she said, her voice breaking for the first time. Daniel shook his head, his expression unreadable. "I just got you here. The rest is up to you. But you're not alone anymore. Not with me, not with them." Claire nodded slowly, feeling the tears she had been holding back finally spill over. She didn't try to stop them, didn't even want to. They weren't tears of weakness. They were tears of release, of finally letting go of everything she had been carrying. Daniel gave her a moment before speaking again. "I'll give you some time," he said gently. "You can stay here as long as you need to. When you're ready, you can make a plan for the future. But for now, just rest." Claire wiped her eyes and nodded again. She couldn't explain what she was feeling, couldn't put it into words. But for the first time in a long time, she felt like she might be able to. Daniel stood up to leave, but paused at the door. "I'll check in on you later," he said. Claire smiled faintly. "Thank you," she said again. He gave her a small nod before stepping out, closing the door softly behind him. For the first time in a long time, Claire felt like she could breathe. The road ahead was still unclear, but for the first time, it didn't feel like it was all on her shoulders. She wasn't sure where this journey would take her, but she was ready to take the next step. Slowly, she sat down, pulling Lily closer as she wrapped an arm around her. "We're safe now," she whispered, her voice soft as she kissed her daughter's forehead. "We're going to be okay." And for the first time, Claire believed it. The sun was barely up the next morning when Claire woke, the room quiet except for the soft, steady breathing of Lily beside her. She had slept deeper than she had in a long time, though the dreams had been fleeting, filled with shadows and echoes of the past. But the night had passed, and now she was awake to a new day. The room around her was simple, but it felt safe. The walls were a soft shade of blue, calming and cool in the morning light. The bed felt solid beneath her, not the worn-out mattress she was used to. It was the kind of quiet she had longed for, the kind that allowed her mind to rest without the constant hum of anxiety. She sat up slowly, careful not to disturb Lily, who was still curled up in a small ball, clutching the blanket around her. The events of the last few days felt like a blur, but now, in the stillness, they seemed more real than ever. Claire ran a hand through her hair, trying to make sense of it all. She had left everything behind. The house, the memories, the fear. It wasn't easy, and it never would be. But she had done it. She had taken the first step, and now she had to keep moving forward. But how? What did that even look like? She glanced at Lily, who shifted in her sleep but didn't wake. The girl was a constant reminder of the strength Claire had found in herself. She had to keep going. For her daughter. She stood up and walked over to the small window, looking out at the quiet street. The world beyond was still waking up, cars slowly passing by, people starting their day. She wondered what it would be like to live a life where she didn't have to look over her shoulder, to feel like she could breathe without waiting for the next thing to go wrong. Was that even possible? She wasn't sure, but she was determined to find out. There was a knock at the door, and Claire turned around quickly. It wasn't a knock that startled her, but the fact that it was happening at all. She hadn't expected anyone to check on her this soon. "Come in," she called, trying to steady her voice. The door creaked open, and a woman stepped in, smiling warmly. She was in her late 30s, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, dressed casually in a simple blouse and jeans. "Morning," the woman said softly. "I'm Emily. I work here." Claire smiled back, a little uncertain. "Hi," she replied, feeling a little embarrassed for not knowing what to say. Emily looked over at Lily, still asleep on the bed, then back at Claire. "How are you both doing this morning?" she asked, her tone gentle. Claire hesitated for a moment before answering. "I'm okay," she said, her voice trailing off. "It's just all a lot to take in." Emily nodded, understanding. "I know. It's a big change, but you're safe here. And we're going to help you figure things out, one step at a time." Claire nodded, feeling a strange sense of comfort in her words. She hadn't expected to feel this calm. It was still early, and her thoughts were still racing. But there was something about Emily's presence that made the weight of it all feel a little lighter. Emily pulled a chair up next to the bed and sat down, her eyes kind but focused. "I know it's a lot right now, but we have resources here. We have counselors, social workers, and people who can help you navigate your next steps. You don't have to do it alone." Claire glanced at Lily again, then back at Emily. "I don't even know where to start," she said quietly. "What do I do next?" Emily's smile didn't falter. "The first thing is to take care of you and Lily. Once you feel ready, we can talk about your options, whether that's finding long-term housing, job opportunities, or legal help. But for now, you take your time. Don't rush." Claire nodded again. The sense of relief she felt almost overwhelming. It was so simple, so small, but it was enough. "Thank you," she said softly, "for being here." Emily reached over and gently placed a hand on Claire's. "That's what we're here for," she said. "To help you take the next step. Whenever you're ready." Claire took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her emotions shift just a little. She was still scared, still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she could trust someone else to help her. She wasn't alone. She looked down at Lily again, who had stirred but was still sleeping peacefully. The girl was her world, and Claire was determined to give her the life she deserved. No more fear. No more waiting for the next thing to go wrong. She wasn't sure how it would all work out, but she was ready to face it, one step at a time. "I think I'm ready," she said quietly, almost to herself. Emily smiled and stood up. "Good," she said. "Then let's get started. When you're ready, we'll be here to walk you through it all." Claire nodded, feeling a small flicker of hope rise inside her. For the first time, it felt like she was moving forward. And that was enough for today. The morning light streamed through the small window, casting a soft glow over the room. Claire had been awake for a while, her thoughts racing through the events of the last few days, trying to make sense of everything. She hadn't expected to feel so much fear and uncertainty, but the reality of the situation had settled in quickly. Lily was still sleeping peacefully beside her, and for a moment, Claire allowed herself to simply watch her daughter, the rise and fall of her chest as she breathed. It was a small, beautiful reminder of why she had made this decision. For her. Slowly, Claire pushed herself out of bed, trying not to disturb Lily. She walked to the small mirror by the door and stared at her reflection for a moment, taking in the tiredness in her eyes, the exhaustion in the lines on her face. She hadn't realized how much she had been carrying until she could finally let go of it. The past few weeks had been a blur, a whirlwind of decisions, emotions, and a constant feeling of fear. But today was different. Today, she could take a deep breath without the weight of everything pressing on her chest. Today she was safe. Today, she had a chance to start over. The knock on the door pulled her out of her thoughts, and she quickly turned toward it. "Come in," she called, her voice steady, though a bit hoarse from the emotions she had been holding back. Emily entered the room with a smile, her presence warm and comforting. "Morning," she said softly. "How are you feeling?" Claire hesitated for a moment before answering. Better, she said quietly, though she still felt the weight of everything lingering in the back of her mind. I think I'm starting to realize what this all means. Emily nodded, as if she understood exactly what Claire was going through. It's a lot to process, she said, walking over to the chair by the window and sitting down. But you're here now, and that's what matters. You've taken the hardest step. Claire nodded, still trying to take it all in. I don't even know where to start, she admitted. There's so much to figure out. I don't know if I'm ready for it. Emily smiled kindly. You don't have to have all the answers right away, she said. You just need to take things one step at a time. You're not alone in this. We're here to help you figure it out. Claire let out a long breath, her shoulders relaxing a little. She hadn't realized how much she had been holding in until she let it go. Thank you, she said quietly. I don't know what I would have done without you. Emily reached out and placed a hand on her arm. You don't have to thank me, she said. This is what we're here for. To help people like you. You're stronger than you think, Claire. Claire gave a small smile, feeling a flicker of hope inside her. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she knew she was ready to face it. For the first time, she felt like she could take that next step. Emily stood up, walking toward the door. I'll let you have some time to yourself, she said gently. But when you're ready, we can talk about the next steps. There's a lot of support here, and we'll help you get connected with the resources you need. Claire nodded, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. She didn't have to do this alone. She wasn't sure what the future would look like, but for the first time, she felt like she could breathe. As Emily left the room, Claire turned back toward Lily, who was just beginning to stir. She couldn't help but smile at the sight of her daughter, still innocent and unaware of the struggles they had faced. Lily looked up at her, her eyes bright with curiosity. Mom, she said sleepily, rubbing her eyes. Are we going to get pancakes today? Claire's heart warmed at the question. We can go get pancakes whenever you're ready, she said softly. Lily smiled, a small but genuine smile, and nodded. I want to go now, she said, her voice filled with excitement. Claire chuckled, shaking her head. Okay, we'll go soon, she said. She sat down on the bed beside Lily, taking a deep breath as she gathered her thoughts. The past few days had been overwhelming, but now, sitting beside her daughter, she felt a sense of calm settle over her. They were safe now. They had a chance to start fresh. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she knew one thing for sure. She was ready to face it. Together, they could take on whatever came next. And for the first time in a long time, that thought gave her a sense of peace. They would start fresh, one step at a time. It had been a few weeks since Claire and Lily arrived at the shelter, and though the days were filled with uncertainty, Claire had come to realize that the slow, steady progress was its own kind of victory. Each day felt like a small step towards something better, something she had never thought possible when she first walked through those doors. Emily had kept her word, guiding Claire through the maze of resources, helping her connect with the right people, and giving her the support she never knew she needed. It wasn't easy, and there were still moments of doubt and fear, but Claire had learned to trust in the process, and more importantly, in herself. One morning, as Claire sat in the small kitchen of the shelter, sipping her coffee while Lily played with a puzzle on the floor, Emily entered the room with a warm smile. Morning, she said, her voice light. How's everything going today? Claire looked up from her cup, her face soft with the quiet happiness that had started to settle in her heart. It's good, she replied, her voice steady. Lily's doing great, and I've been looking into a few things for work. I think I'm finally ready to take the next step. Emily's eyes brightened, and she walked over to sit beside Claire at the table. That's great, Claire. I'm really proud of you. Claire smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her. It wasn't often that she allowed herself to acknowledge how far she had come, but hearing someone else say it made the journey feel real. I'm proud of me too, she said, her voice more confident now. It's still a little scary, but I'm starting to believe that maybe I can do this. Emily nodded, her expression full of understanding. I know it's been tough, but you've come so far. And you're not doing it alone. You've got people who care about you and Lily, and that makes all the difference. Claire's gaze shifted toward Lily, who was now concentrating on placing a piece of the puzzle into its correct spot. It was a simple thing, but it felt like a sign of something bigger. Her daughter was finding her way, just as Claire was. Claire's heart swelled with a mixture of pride and love. She had come to realize that her strength was not just about pushing through the hard times, but about allowing herself to be vulnerable enough to accept help when she needed it. She wasn't perfect, and there would still be challenges ahead, but she was no longer afraid of the unknown. You know, Claire said after a pause, I didn't think I could make it this far. I thought I was too broken to fix. But every day feels a little less like survival and a little more like living. Emily's smile softened, and she placed a hand gently on Claire's arm. That's because you're letting yourself heal. You've always had the strength, Claire. You just needed to give yourself permission to use it. Claire let out a deep breath, her shoulders relaxing for the first time in a while. I think I'm starting to understand that, she said, her voice quieter now, more at peace. And I'm ready to keep moving forward. I'm ready to make the next step for me and for Lily. As if on cue, Lily looked up from her puzzle and beamed at Claire. Mom, look. I finished it. Claire's heart warmed at the sight of her daughter's excitement. She leaned down to give Lily a quick hug, kissing the top of her head. I'm so proud of you, she said. You're doing amazing. Lily grinned, clearly proud of herself, and Claire couldn't help but feel the same pride swell in her chest. There were still so many unknowns, but Claire had learned that the unknown wasn't something to fear. It was something to embrace. She had a life to build now, a future to create, and she wasn't going to waste another moment doubting herself. That evening, after dinner, Claire sat with Emily to discuss her next steps. I've been thinking, she said, her voice steady but filled with a new kind of certainty. I want to go back to school. I know it's a big step, but I feel like it's the right thing to do. I want to be able to provide for Lily, and I want to show her that it's never too late to change your life. Emily's eyes lit up with excitement. That's amazing, Claire. I think it's a great idea, and I'm here to help however I can. Claire smiled, feeling the weight of her past finally begin to lift. She wasn't the person she used to be, but that wasn't a bad thing. She was stronger now, more resilient. She had made it through the hardest part, and now she could face the future with hope instead of fear. That night, as Claire tucked Lily into bed, she sat for a moment, watching her daughter sleep. She had come so far, and for the first time in a long time, Claire was able to believe that they both had a bright future ahead of them. We're going to be okay, Claire whispered softly, as if reassuring herself. She kissed Lily's forehead and stood up, her heart full of peace. It was only the beginning of their new life, but Claire knew she was ready. She had already taken the hardest step, and that, in itself, was enough. In this powerful journey, we dive deep into the world of courage, survival, and the unexpected bonds formed in times of crisis. As we follow the path of Claire and her daughter Lily, their story of resilience and hope unfolds, revealing the strength found even in the most uncertain circumstances. The bond between them grows stronger as they face the challenges life throws at them, and their journey leads them to a place of safety and opportunity. As their story progresses, Claire learns to trust again, not only in others but in herself, while Lily finds solace in the quiet moments of their new life. Their tale mirrors the unexpected twists often seen in Hell Angel stories, where individuals find themselves on paths they never imagined, often shaped by the power of connection and personal growth. This journey isn't just about escaping danger, it's about reclaiming one's life and stepping into a future filled with hope and possibility. Through the struggles they face, Claire and Lily discover that even in the darkest times, strength can be found. Just like many Hell Angel stories, this one proves that no matter how hard life gets, there is always room for redemption, change, and starting anew. With every new step, Claire realizes that her strength, much like the heroes in Hell Angel stories, lies in her ability to persevere. It's a reminder that sometimes the hardest battles lead to the most meaningful transformations. The story continues to unfold with each passing day, showing how resilience, hope, and love can redefine a life, much like the unexpected turns seen in Hell Angel stories. As they embrace their new life, Claire and Lily understand that the road to recovery is not linear, but with each step, they are rewriting their story, much like the characters in Hell Angel's stories who carve out their futures through trials and triumphs.